Hi, welcome to Georgia's Mystery Library. Today I'd like to talk about the collecting term completist. Now, some of us have ingrained in our DNA the desire that if we like one book by a particular author, that we collect all books by that particular author or all books in a particular series by that author. Now, I have to admit that I have that gene, but I'm an imperfect completist. I don't have complete sets of everything, but I do have a lot of them. So today, just to illustrate that, I'd like to talk about the author James Grady. James Grady is famous for his book 6 Days of the Condor, which is a espionage novel, and it was made into a very famous movie with Robert Redford and Faye Dunaway called 3 Days of the Condor. You know, movies when they're adapted from books can't take everything from the book, they have to shorten it down. So it went from 6 days to 3 days. So he successfully published that first novel, and I have a signed first edition of that. And then he published a sequel called Shadow of the Condor. And I also have a signed first edition of that. Now, many, many years passed by, and James was talked into coming up with a sequel to the sequel. So the third book in this series was published, like I say, many years later in 2015, and it was called Last Days of the Condor. Now that sounds like it's probably ending the series right there. And I have a signed first edition of that. And then Otto Penzler, who was a big fan of James Grady, started publishing little books in hardback and paperback that were bibliomysteries by a number of different authors, and this series has been very successful for him. And so he enticed James to come out with a new book. It's more of a novella, 73 pages, and they were published in paperback and then a limited edition of hardbacks. And this is the hardback. If you look here on the page, this is copy 53 of 100 copies, also signed. And then Otto convinced him to publish a compilation of short stories about Condor, and this was, I think, done in 2019. So I obtained that as well. Now, being a completist can be a very difficult thing. Fortunately, in this case, there were a small number, relatively small number of books to collect. But if you have all 5 of those, you're a completist with the Condor series of James Grady. Of course, he wrote many other thrillers. If you're a completist for a very prolific authors, such as, let's say, Lawrence Block. I know a friend of mine who is a completist of Lawrence Block, and you would not believe some of the things he brings to the signing line at conventions to have Larry Block sign. I mean, he's got stacks. I mean, he comes with stacks of these old paperbacks that Larry wrote under pen names really obscure stuff, but it's amazing. I mean, he'll come and bring magazine articles or just things that you've never heard of or didn't even imagine existed. So you can take things to an extreme if you're a real fan and amass a collection of very obscure and sometimes very valuable items. Now, it's always important to get as many books in your collection signed. Getting them signed adds value to a book if the book is a first edition or first printing. If it's just a reader's copy, then that's for your own enjoyment, but it doesn't add value. And we'll talk more about that later. Thank you for watching.